Yes, welcome everyone. Okay, so let's start. As far as I remember, we plan to spend first few weeks on the foundations and then start reading the papers. और उसमें हमने 4 जो टॉपिक्स सिलेक्ट किए थे शुरू में डिस्कशन के लिए, वो थे ऑन्टोलॉजी, एपिस्टेमोलॉजी, एक्सियोलॉजी और मेथोडोलॉजी। जो उसमें से हमने ऑन्टोलॉजी और एपिस्टेमोलॉजी जो है उसको काफ़ी हद तक डिस्कस कर लिए, और अब जो है आज जो है मैं एक्सियोलॉजी और मेथोडोलॉजी को डिस्कस करके ये हमारा जो इनिशियल फेज था इसको हम रैप अप करना चाहता हूँ। और उसके बाद जो है फिर हम जो है कुछ एक्टिविटीज की तरफ चले जाएंगे। So axiology जो है it has to do with values. जैसे ontology जो था वो हमने देखा था वो existence से उसका ताल्लुक था, ठीक है। वो एक क्वेश्चन है कि what exists, ठीक है। किसको हम किस चीज को ये हम स्टेटस अवॉर्ड करते हैं, एग्जिस्टेंस का, ठीक है। और एपिस्टेमोलॉजी जो थी वो डील करती थी नॉलेज से, कि जो भी एग्जिस्ट करता है उसके बारे में हम कैसे इदराक हासिल करते हैं, ये किस तरह से हम उसके बारे में अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग डेवलप करते हैं। तो एक्सियोलॉजी जो है इसका ताल्लुक है वैल्यूज से, और वैल्यूज थोड़ी सी इस तरह का सवाल उठाती हैं कि ये हम क्यों, whatever we are doing, why we are doing it, ठीक है, और should we do this। तो इसका ताल्लुक हमारे राइट और रॉन्ग से इसका ताल्लुक है, ठीक है। और राइट और रॉन्ग जो है वो जो है हमारी वैल्यूज जो हैं वो डिटरमिन करती हैं, और हमारी परसेप्शंस जो हैं वो, जो इसमें जो है एथिक्स और मोरालिटी टाइप के जो सब्जेक्ट्स हैं वो इसमें आ जाते हैं। और जो फाइनल कंपोनेंट है मेथोडोलॉजी का, वो बेसिकली वो प्रोसीजर्स और वो फिजिकल स्टेप्स जो हैं उनको वो मैं उनसे डील करते हैं, जिसकी मदद से हम जो है ये नॉलेज ऑब्टेन करते हैं, या फिर हम जो है जो फिजिकल जिसकी इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है, जो हमें काम करने पड़ते हैं फॉर डूइंग आवर रिसर्च, वो उसको हम मेथोडोलॉजी के अंदर जो है लंप करते हैं। तो जो वैसे तो मैं what I will do is right after today's session, I will put up some material which deals with all 4 components, these 4 components: ontology, epistemology, or axiology, or methodology. However, usme maybe let me kind of say that some of the material might be quite technical in nature. Okay, so if it is really technical for you, please let me know, ठीक है, कि ये बहुत टेक्निकल है या ये समझ नहीं आया या जो भी है। लेकिन I really want you to read that material, ठीक है, even if it seems very difficult to understand, क्योंकि जो अभी ज़बानी हम बातें कर रहे हैं वो तो बहुत आसान है समझना, ठीक है, they are not very difficult। जब हम उससे मटेरियल जो होगा वो जो है वो इतना आसानी से हमें समझ नहीं आएगा। तो there must be it seems कि हम there is a disconnect between what we are saying at the moment and what is in that material। लेकिन मैं उसको जो है आपसे ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि वो जो है although it might be written in a very technical form, लेकिन जो उसके underlying concepts हैं वो इतने difficult नहीं है, ठीक है? वो यही है जो हम discuss कर रहे हैं. एक phrase इस्तेमाल होते हैं forbidden knowledge. इसके बारे में आप में से कोई मुझे बताना पसंद करेगा कि ये आपने पहले सुना है या नहीं सुना, या अगर फर्स्ट टाइम सुना आपने तो आपके क्या इसमें इंप्रेशन क्रिएट हो रहा है इस फ्रेज को सुनने के बाद? forbidden knowledge. जी, anyone? Interestingly, nobody has today has switched on their camera. Normally एक दो तीन लोग कर लेते हैं, so आज किसी ने नहीं किया, but I'm not getting any participation also from anyone. So SN Ali, आप कुछ कहना चाहेंगे?
Hello.
जी. Yep. पाकिस्तान. SN Ali, आप दोबारा से अपने आप को इंट्रोड्यूस कराएं. I'm sorry, I forgot. आपने जो इंट्रोड्यूस कराया था पहले अपने आप को.
Yeah, so my name is Yasin Ali. I have been working in Daraz for like 2 years. I have total experience of like 4 to 5 years of experience. Secondly, it's my 3rd semester in MSCS, and I have graduated from FAST University in Department of Computer Science.
Okay, excellent. अच्छा देखिए ऐसा वाली आपको जो है ना ये काफी चीज लग रही होगी कि ये इट्स वेरी डिफरेंट फ्रॉम डिस्कशंस दैट जो अभी इस वक्त तक आपकी फास्ट में या इससे पहले जो दूसरे सब्जेक्ट्स में डिस्कशंस हुई हैं इनसे ये काफी डिफरेंट लग रही होगी. तो मैं आपसे वह पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि am I correct in assuming that you might be finding it different, and if it's correct then how is it different, or agar I'm wrong then how is it similar to what other discussions have taken place in other courses?
So sir, I think in the past courses that I have taken, so there were 2 courses that were very interactive in the class, and it was on physical as well. So I think it's the first time I have taken the course as online, but it's interactive too as well, right? Or in online class. So I think the major difference just was basically the physical class and the online class. But I had a great interactive class in previous semester as well.
Thank you very much for that, Asan. लेकिन मेरा question जो था वो it was more towards the subject matter itself. ठीक है? तो उसमें आपको कोई difference लग रहा है?
Yeah, so of course it's a part of the research, as I was not planning to take the thesis for MSCS, so I just wanted to have a knowledge on the research side. Maybe in the future if I am taking any of the research topics carrying out, so I should have knowledge on the research part as well, right?
All right, thank you very much, Asan. So I have this kind of suspicion that for some of you, this initial foundation might be too abstract and too conceptual, because computer science वाले जो हैं आमतौर पे they're very practical, और आमतौर पे जो problem वो solve करने की कोशिश कर रहे होते हैं वो ये है कि भाई ये how to get this program to work, ठीक है? और उसके जो टेक्निकल चीजें हैं उसकी कंपोनेंट्स आर्किटेक्चर उनको समझने में ज़्यादा टाइम लगता है, ठीक है? तो ये दिस इज जस्ट माय सस्पिशन, यू कैन करेक्ट मी, बट दिस इज माय सस्पिशन. जी, तो तूबा जो है वो थोड़ा सा सपोर्ट कर रही है मुझे इस चीज में कि ये जो जिस टाइप की चीजें हम इस कोर्स में कर रहे हैं हो सकता है आपने पहले ना की हो, ठीक है? तो उसका लेकिन एक रीजन ये है इस चेंज का, वो ये है कि जब हम रिसर्च मेथड्स की बात करते हैं तो पाकिस्तान में रिसर्च का क्वांटम बहुत तेजी से बढ़ा है, ठीक है? लास्ट फ्यू इयर्स में एकदम से डबल 4 टाइम्स 10 टाइम्स हो गया रिसर्च आउटपुट का हमारा, और क्वालिटी भी हमारी बढ़ी है, ग्रेजुअली बढ़ी है. लेकिन हम अभी बिल्कुल फोर फ्रंट पे नहीं आए रिसर्च के। तो मेरा जो इसमें ऑब्जेक्टिव है वो ये है कि जो भी मुझे एक्सपोजर हुआ है अबाउट रिसर्च, ठीक है, इंटरेक्टिंग विद some of the researchers जिनकी मैं बहुत रिस्पेक्ट करता हूँ, ठीक है, and there are very big names in their fields also, ठीक है। फॉर एग्जांपल जो हाइंस क्लाइन जो मेरे सुपरवाइजर थे, उनके नाम पे एक फील्ड पूरा जो है वो मौजूद है, उसे क्लानियन इंफॉर्मेशन सिस्टम्स के नाम से वो पहचाना जाता है। तो ही इज काइंड ऑफ फाउंडर ऑफ अ फील्ड इटसेल्फ, ठीक है। तो इसी तरह से जो उनके साथ के कोलीग्स हैं या दूसरे जो मेरे अभी करंट कोलीग्स हैं, I have a lot of respect for them. तो मैं आई ट्राई टू वेरी क्लोजली लुक एट देम कि ये इनकी रिसर्च किस तरह की होती है, किस तरह की ये रिसर्च करते हैं, व्हाट आर द थिंग्स दे आर इंटरेस्टेड। तो उससे मुझे ये अंदाजा हुआ कि हमें जो है कुछ फंडामेंटल्स पे थोड़ा सा हमें फोकस करना पड़ेगा। खाली प्रैक्टिकल जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन है उसमें तो वी आर वेरी गुड, ठीक है, लेकिन उसकी कुछ हमें बैकग्राउंड थोड़ी सी चाहिए होती है। तो हम जिस तरह से बैकग्राउंड में जाते हैं तो ये चीजें एब्स्ट्रैक्ट होती चली जाती है। इसकी एग्जांपल मैं इस तरह से भी दे सकता हूँ कि जैसे एक मोटरसाइकिल मैकेनिक होता है, ठीक है, तो दैट पर्सन इज वेरी कॉम्पिटेंट इन फिक्सिंग द मोटरसाइकिल, ठीक है। तो वो एक बहुत प्रैक्टिकल लेवल पे उसको सारा उसका आर्किटेक्चर पता होता है मोटरसाइकिल का, उसमें क्या क्या खराबियां हो सकती हैं, किस तरह से उसको फिक्स किया जा सकता है, वो एक लेवल की उसकी नॉलेज होती है, ठीक है। फिर उससे अगर आप थोड़ा सा पीछे जाएं तो उसमें फिर हमारे पास हम देखते हैं कि इंजीनियरिंग की जो है, मैकेनिकल इंजीनियरिंग, केमिकल इंजीनियरिंग, उसकी नॉलेज की मदद से वो हम एक मोटरसाइकिल को डिज़ाइन कर सकते हैं, एंड वी नो हाउ टू डिज़ाइन अ गुड मोटरसाइकिल। अब उसमें जो है जो इंजीनियरिंग की जो अंडरस्टैंडिंग है वो यामाहा के पास जो है और जो सुजुकी के पास है, वो अपनी अपनी नॉलेज को इस्तेमाल करके वो डिज़ाइन करते हैं उसका इंजन, ठीक है। और फिर वो उसकी देखते हैं कि किस तरह से ये हम इंजीनियरिंग नॉलेज को यूटिलाइज करके वी कैन मेक अ बेटर मोटरसाइकिल। लेकिन ये जो इंजीनियरिंग है इसकी फाउंडेशन जो है अगर उसमें चले जाएं तो वो हम देखते हैं कि फिजिक्स जो है उसके जो लॉज हैं वो प्रोवाइड करते हैं इंजीनियरिंग की नॉलेज, ठीक है। तो इंजीनियरिंग की जो फाउंडेशन है वो आपकी फिजिक्स है। फिजिक्स जो है वो थोड़ा सा ज़्यादा फंडामेंटल लेवल पे है और उसकी बेसिस पे जो है इंजीनियरिंग जो है वो बेस करती है। और फिर फिजिक्स को जो है भी हम उसके भी एक फर्दर फाउंडेशन है फिजिक्स इटसेल्फ की, ठीक है। वो है जिसको हम ये चार जो कॉन्सेप्ट डिस्कस कर रहे हैं, ऑन्टोलॉजी, एपिस्टेमोलॉजी, एक्सियोलॉजी और मेथोडोलॉजी, ये फिर फिजिक्स की जो है इस बेसिस है, फाउंडेशंस। तो ये इस तरह के क्वेश्चंस जो हैं डील करना कि असल में नॉलेज क्या चीज़ है, उसको किस तरह से हम एक्वायर कर सकते हैं, किस तरह से हम जनरेट कर सकते हैं नॉलेज को, और किस तरह की नॉलेज को जनरेट करना चाहिए, किस तरह की नॉलेज को एक्वायर करना चाहिए, ठीक है। और उसको प्रैक्टिकली क्या उसको हम इंश्योर कर सकते हैं कि जो नॉलेज हम जनरेट कर रहे हैं वो वाकई नॉलेज है, ठीक है। इट्स नॉट समथिंग दैट लुक्स लाइक नॉलेज बट एक्चुअली इट्स नॉट, ठीक है। क्योंकि नॉलेज जो है उसको डिफरेंशिएट करना बड़ा इम्पोर्टेंट है कि नॉलेज को हम कोई फॉल्स अंडरस्टैंडिंग के साथ कंफ्यूज ना करें, ठीक है। कि वी शुड नॉट थिंक कि ये जो हम हमारे पास चीज़ है वो नॉलेज है, असल में वो नॉलेज नहीं है, ठीक है। तो दैट इज व्हाई इट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू बिकम फेमिलियर विद दिस टाइप ऑफ क्वेश्चंस, कि इसको पहचान कैसे करते हैं हम, सही नॉलेज की पहचान कैसे करते हैं, ठीक है। और सही नॉलेज को किस तरह से एक्वायर किया जा सकता है, और सही नॉलेज जो है उसके लिए हमें क्या क्या प्रिकॉशंस कह लें, या आप कह लें कि हमें किन चीज़ों का ख्याल रखना पड़ता है, दैट वी डोंट फॉल इनटू दिस ट्रैप, कि ये जो हमने जो चीज़ प्रोड्यूस की है वो एक्चुअली नॉलेज है और असल में वो नॉलेज ना हो, वो समटाइम्स इट्स जस्ट data that we don't understand, and sometimes it's just false notions that we generate, and sometimes it is misinterpretations that we generate, and sometimes it is basically we don't understand anything that we have generated. ये भी मैंने देखा है बहुत सारे unfortunately इस तरह के research papers भी मैंने देखे हैं जिसमें जो ऑथर्स होते हैं उस पेपर के, उनको कोई आइडिया नहीं होता कि उन्होंने इसमें क्या काम किया, क्या क्या लिखा है, but somehow they complete their research and publish it. So we, in order to go really forward, ठीक है, एक तो होती है ना जिसे आप कह सकते हैं कि कॉस्मेटिक्स की मदद से जो है हम एक प्रेजेंट करें अपनी जो हमारी इम्प्रूवमेंट या एडवांसमेंट हो रही है, ठीक है, लेकिन एक होता है कि एक्चुअली अंदर का जो सब्सटेंस है उसको हम इम्प्रूव करें. तो एज फार एज रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी कोर्स इज कंसर्न, उसके जो प्राइमरी कंसर्न है वो ये है कि हमें हम रिसर्च को, we should not consider research as a trade that can be learned. Like it's not the set of tricks that we want to learn. Okay, this is not the purpose of this course. कि अच्छा ये आप ट्रिक्स कर लें और देखिए पेपर जो है उसको उसकी ये हेडिंग होनी चाहिए, इतना इसका वो होना चाहिए, लेंथ होनी चाहिए, और एक सेक्शन होना चाहिए जो कहलाए फाइंडिंग्स, और एक सेक्शन होना चाहिए जो कहलाए डिस्कशन, और उसके बाद अगर आप उसमें फी वैल्यूज ऐड कर दें अपने पेपर में तो बहुत अच्छी रिसर्च हो जाएगी. ये वाली जो चीज़ें हैं they might actually help you in getting a paper published, लेकिन इसके में ये होगा कि हमें अपने तौर पे हमें कुछ नहीं पता चलेगा कि हमने ये सारा काम क्यों किया है, ठीक है, और इसका जो हमने चीज़ प्रोड्यूस किया उसका पर्पस क्या है. So we won't do that. तो उसका genuinely creating research output जो है, that is the purpose of this course. और उसके लिए fortunately या अनफॉर्चुनेटली हमें थोड़ा सा ये इस डीपर लेवल पे थोड़ा सा देर स्पेंड करनी पड़ेगी, जिसमें हम ये जो फंडामेंटल क्वेश्चंस हैं इनके बारे में हम सवाल करना चाहते हैं और इनके जवाब हासिल करना चाहते हैं इन सवालात के. फ्रॉम माय एक्सपीरियंस sometimes this approach is not welcomed very much in the society, क्योंकि उससे ये लगता है सोसाइटी में ये ऐसा फील होता है कि इसकी हमें डायरेक्ट कोई फायदा नहीं होगा इस डिस्कशन का, ठीक है. इट इज समथिंग लाइक कि अगर एक डॉक्टर जो है वो कहे कि मुझे आप बिल्कुल मेडिसिन की कोई नॉलेज नहीं दें, मुझे सिर्फ ये बता दें कि जब सर दर्द हो तो उसको कौन सी गोली देनी है, एंड दैट्स द ओनली नॉलेज आई वांट, ठीक है. तो हो सकता है कि आप उसको 5, 6, 7 सिम्टम्स की जो उस वक्त अवेलेबल हो रिकमेंडेशंस वो आप बता सकें कि अगर ये हो तो ये कर लो, अगर ये हो तो ये कर लो, और फिर उसके बाद वो लिमिट हो जाएगी. तो वो उन केसेस में तो हो सकता है वो एक बड़ा प्रोफेशनल डॉक्टर जो है वो बन जाए, क्योंकि वो जब एक सर दर्द का पेशेंट आया उसको वो अपनी लिस्ट में देखे कि अच्छा इसको ये दवाई देनी है, वो दे दी दवाई और उसका सर का दर्द ठीक हो गया, लोग खुश हो जाएंगे कि बहुत अच्छा डॉक्टर है, ठीक है. तो दैट डॉक्टर विल बी रिमेन अ गुड डॉक्टर एज लॉन्ग एज जो उसके पास पेशेंट्स आ रहे हैं वो उस fixed limited list के अंदर से आ रहे, but that doctor will have no deeper understanding कि why is this medicine working in this situation. ठीक है, तो रिसर्च का भी तकरीबन यही ताल्लुक है, इसी तरह का चीज है कि वी कैन जनरेट अ लिस्ट ऑफ ट्रिक्स कि आप ये करें तो आपकी रिसर्च अच्छी हो जाएगी, या फिर हम जो है एक थोड़ी सी डीपर अंडरस्टैंडिंग हासिल करने की कोशिश करें, which is really required. So with this I will stop here, और मैं आपको जो है एक छोटे से एक्टिविटी देता हूँ. आज का वैसे हमारा जो सेशन है वो भी शॉर्ट सेशन होगा, but I will just break you out into rooms. अच्छा, इसमें आप ये बताएं कि आप आपस में एक दूसरे को पहले से जानते हैं सब लोग, या everyone is new to everyone else in this room class?
Sir, mostly new.
Yeah, sort of new, sir.
Okay, which means I can randomly put you into groups. Okay, so I will create 6 breakout rooms, और उसमें से आप खुद चूज कर लें अपने तौर पे कि आप कहाँ जाना चाहते हैं, बल्कि I'll actually put you in these rooms randomly. ठीक है, तो 3 या 4 के ग्रुप्स होंगे, और आपने करना क्या होगा कि आपने I will give you about actually 20 minutes. 20 minutes में आपने एक छोटी सी प्रेजेंटेशन जो है वो तैयार करनी होगी, और वो मैं लिख भी दूंगा आपको ब्रेकआउट रूम में ब्रॉडकास्ट. लेकिन वो है कि आपने 2 टर्म्स जो हैं उनको एक्सप्लेन करना होगा. ठीक है, तो यू विल हैव टू डू सम रिसर्च, और उसके ऊपर आप अपने तौर पे जो है एक्सप्लेन करेंगे. अच्छा, इसमें रिक्वायरमेंट ये है कि ये फॉर्मल प्रेजेंटेशंस आपने तैयार नहीं करनी होगी. दे हैव टू बी टोटली इनफॉर्मल. टोटली इनफॉर्मल का मतलब है कि कोई इसमें ऐसा वर्ड आप यूज नहीं करेंगे जो कि ऑलरेडी कहीं इंटरनेट पे लिखा हुआ है या किसी बुक में लिखा हुआ है. ठीक है, तो वो बिल्कुल इसमें इजाजत नहीं होगी. आपने सिर्फ अपने अल्फाज में बहुत इनफॉर्मली जो है मुझे बताना है कि ये हम समझिए. आफ्टर डिस्कशन 20 मिनट्स की डिस्कशन करनी होगी, और उसके बाद जो भी आपके व्यूज जो हैं वो डेवलप हुए हैं उन टर्म्स के बारे में, वो आपने आके क्लास में बताने होंगे, एंड दैट्स द ओनली एक्टिविटी. ठीक है, तो उसमें आप बिल्कुल भी कोई आप स्लाइड्स बना सकते हैं, उसके ऊपर मेन पॉइंट्स लिख सकते हैं, लेकिन उसमें कोई भी जुमला नहीं होना चाहिए ऐसा कि जो आपने कहीं से जो है किताब में पढ़ा हो या आपने कहीं और से किसी और से सुना हो. सिर्फ आपके अपने अल्फाज होने चाहिए इसमें, और कुछ. तो लेट मी शेयर यू कि आपने इन 2 टर्म्स पे काम. तो इस वक्त से ये 2 टर्म्स हैं, पॉजिटिविज्म और इंटरप्रेटिविज्म. ठीक है, तो आपको मैं ब्रेकआउट रूम्स में डिवाइड कर दूंगा. अभी यू विल हैव 20 मिनट्स टू गैदर योर ओन आइडियाज, और डिस्कस करके आपकी अपनी अंडरस्टैंडिंग जो भी है इन दोनों वर्ड्स के बारे में, ठीक है, उसको आपने प्रेजेंट करना होगा. व्हेन यू कम बैक फ्रॉम द ब्रेकआउट रूम्स, you will have 20 minutes in the breakout rooms, and when you come back you will say कि हमने इसमें ये डिस्कस किया. ठीक है, is this clear to everyone? Yes, sure, please. Let's wait for everyone to come back.
Yeah, but we are one group, Ibrahim, Sarosh, and क्या कहते हैं I. So do we have to go together or do we have to go individually?
Go together. Yep. So was
ठीक है
the
sir.
group activity.
And sir, we can share our screen, right? We can show
Yep.
our working and everything.
Right, you can do that.
ठीक है, I'll start then.
Okay. Excellent. So I think everyone is back, and I think Soha, आप कौन से group breakout room में थी?
Sir, breakout room 2.
Yeah.
breakout room, true. Okay, so yes, so we have breakout room 2 first. Please, yeah, and if you can switch on your cameras, that would be great. Excellent, while presenting at least. All right, please
Okay,
go
sir.
ahead.
So I think क्या कहते हैं, Ibrahim will go for explaining the positivism,
Sure.
and then I
Sure.
can chime in.
Okay, so let me just take a start here. So for this positivism, there are two basic ways in which the term positivism can be defined. The first one pertain to the nature of existence or the ontological view, which actually states that objects or the reality is subjective and doesn't depend on the observer. The second way in which the term positivism can be defined is the epistemological view, which deals with the nature of knowledge. So the people who believe in positivism school of thought believe that the acquiring of knowledge is actually based on quantitative methodologies. So if you'd like to chime in.
Okay, yeah. So further explaining, like Ibrahim just said, that there are two ways we are looking at it. So the first way we look at it is in the ontological way. So the idea is that the world exists for the positivist idea is that from the ontological perspective, the nature of being, the world exists whether or not the observer is here. So whether I just disappear right now, this office will remain here, right? That is the positivist perspective related to the nature of being. Then as for what that implies is that the epistemological view of how we can gain information is independent of the observer. So the idea is that if you want to obtain any information, it will have to be a quantitative or logical method of reasoning to get that information. And moving on to the interpretivism, I think Sarosh will, I would like you to go first and then I can explain.
Okay, thank you, Sua. So the interpretivism. So basically, this is the discovery, like how people make senses of their in their social world. So basically, they are not we can say puppets of the sociologists, because they don't follow the rules which they define or which shapes the society. So they follow their own consciousness, and they gather their knowledge in the time bounded area, and it is also states that the knowledge that is acquired is based on the different contexts and are not context dependent.
Okay, so adding on to that, so the idea behind interpretivism is that the main idea is that it is dependent on the observer. If two people are in a room together and they are engaging in a conversation, they have completely different experiences. They can have completely different experiences of that experience, right? And because that admits that reality is in some way, shape, or form shaped by the observer that is present in that reality. So having this idea, the ontological way of looking at the world would be subjective, and like I said, based on the observer, and therefore admitting that there are multiple sociological realities that exist, right, based on the observer. And then what does that mean for how we obtain knowledge? So obtaining knowledge in a world that you realize is very nuanced and subjective is based on the context and is time bound. So it is going to be about the perspective of people, their experiences in a certain situation. And positivism and interpretivism are sort of like two opposite, like obviously they might have some in the overlap, but if you look at it, one says that reality is completely objective and the other says that reality is subjective and based on the person. So I guess that is what we understood about these terms. Thank you very much for your time.
Excellent. That was a great presentation. very good research. But before I comment, obviously, I really want to comment on these, but I'll just stop myself and ask the other groups to come and present. और बाकी सब लोगों से मेरी गुजारिश ये कि when somebody is presenting, please try to listen very carefully to what they are saying, so that when the floor opens, everyone can comment on each other's presentation as well. So with this, I would like to request the next group, whoever wants to go next, to come and present.
Sir, we will want to go next.
Please, sure.
Yep. So we are breakout room number 3.
Right.
And the group members are me, myself, Zain, Hassan Ali, Raza Master, and Akib Raza. So I would request Akib and Raza to go first and explain positivism.
ओके सो हमने इसमें कुछ पॉइंट्स सम अप किए थे और काफी सारे पॉइंट में कुछ पॉइंट्स सम अप किए थे, जिसमें से हमारा ये मानना है कि जो पॉजिटिविज्म है वो बेसिकली इसका ऑन्टोलॉजिकल देखा जाए तो ऑन्टोलॉजी ये कहता है कि नेचर ऑफ एग्जिस्टेंस इन द वर्ल्ड, मतलब कि वो एग्जिस्ट करता है इस दुनिया में, जो जैसे कहा कि अभी ये ऑब्जेक्टिव है। और जैसे पॉजिटिविस्ट ये मानते हैं कि पॉजिटिविस्ट का ये होता है कि उनका एक डायरेक्ट एक्सेस होता है रियल वर्ल्ड से। वो ये बिलीव करते हैं कि क्वांटिटेटिव रिसर्च मेथड्स को फॉलो करते हैं, और जैसे कि सर्वे हो गया, क्वेश्चनेयर्स हो गया, स्टैटिस्टिक्स हो गया, और वो मोस्टली सिंगल रिजल्ट की तरफ जाते हैं, लेकिन उसके कंक्लूजन्स मल्टीपल होते हैं। जैसे कि एक वैल्यू उन्होंने निकाल ली, अब उस वैल्यू से क्या क्या प्रेडिक्ट किया जा सकता है या क्या क्या एज्यूम किया जा सकता है, वो फिर अपने कंक्लूजन्स में वो बताते हैं। जबकि इंटरप्रिटेशन ये लोग ये करते हैं कि उनका डायरेक्टली कोई रियल वर्ल्ड से एक्सेस नहीं होता, क्योंकि वो सब्जेक्टिव है। और इसी तरह वो लोग ये फॉलो करते हैं कि जो फैक्ट है वो किसी मायने के बगैर एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता, और उनका सिर्फ उनके
अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
दिमाग में। जी okay
Sir, carrying on.
Please
Okay.
continue.
So basically, positivism में अगर हम ontologist perspective देखें, तो ontologist perspective is about कि there are set of principles, और उनका जो interaction है वो nature of being itself, वो जो है वो true है, उस पर true नहीं कर। और epistemology है, it's more about how do we know what we know। मतलब ये positivism, ये हमने जो research की है अगर पॉजिटिविस्ट, तो इसमें क्यों है, कैसे है, और इट्स ऑल अबाउट क्वेश्चनिंग इट। और इसमें अगर हम ये देखें तो बेसिकली पॉजिटिविज्म का रज़ा ने बता दिया, इट्स अबाउट लॉज ऑफ डूइंग रिसर्च एंड एवरीथिंग इज बेस्ड ऑन डूइंग रिसर्च कंपेयर्ड टू इंटरप्रेटिविज्म। और इसके अलावा आई गेस रज़ा आप कुछ ऐड करना चाहेंगे?
No, Zen, please continue.
Yes, Essen, do you want to go first, please?
Yeah, so discussing about interpretivism research, we have also studied that it's related to epistemology, in which we try to gain the knowledge of the world, and which is basically not related to the human action, but it is actually detached from the human actions. Like we have also studied the example that why people scratch their face, or why they pull their hair. So there was an example that we have studied as well.
Thank you, Essen. Okay, so I would just like to build upon Essen's point. So interpretivism is actually the thinking that the object does not exist itself, and when we are researching, so we have to cater this this thinking that only the mind is that exists. So with this thinking we start off, and the ontological perspective says that there's no direct access to the real world, no single external reality. And this is, as Raza said, this is seen through the subjective world. And in this, we have to find out the meanings that people assign to phenomena. I mean, just to explain in simple words, we can say that facts cannot exist without meaning, because now we are thinking that the mind only exists, so we need to state the facts that exist with meaning. So that's a very, very simple definition in my words about interpretivism. And from epistemological point of view, I would say that it is understood through perceived knowledge, and research focuses on specific and concrete, seeking to understand the specific context, basically. So that's a very brief explanation of interpretivism. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much. Again, I have to suppress my urge to comment right away. And यहाँ पे मैं आप लोगों से पूछना चाह रहा हूँ कि is there anyone who would like to go next?
Sir, I would like to present.
Sure, please go ahead.
So positivism has an approach based on facts and figures. It has more to do with absolute laws of nature, whereas interpretivism has an approach based on human understanding and perception. Positivism deals with the general rule-based thinking, and interpretivism is based on contextual thinking, or we can say it has to do with the individual case-based thinking. Um, Eamon, can you present this point?
Which one, Soha?
This one.
General rule-based thinking.
Yep.
Yeah. So for this point of positivism, so positivism is more towards coming towards a law that is applicable at a general level, and not like more like an individual level. So basically, for instance, if we are assessing any situation, so rather than assessing it case by case, that is a part of interpretivism, we'll be looking more towards like coming towards a factual thing. Like for instance, if we say that these are some social agents and they have been exposed to these factors, and according to their exposure they are going to behave in a certain way or feel in a certain way, so that is more towards coming towards a general law, rather than saying that if this individual has a different perception, so he is going to perceive things in a specific way. So it's more, positivism is more towards a general thinking, and interpretivism is more towards an individual case-based evaluation that can it's more looking at the specificity of an individual rather than a specificity of the people, and it's more like case-based analysis. Yeah. Should I
Okay,
go ahead
so
with
the next point is that it is not biased. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think we can continue.
So positivism, it is not biased, means that there can be no arguments or very limited arguments in positivism, while in interpretivism it can be biased. We can debate on such topics. As positivism has more to do with the hard sciences that include maths, physics, so there can be no debate on that, whereas in interpretivism it has to do with the soft sciences, which includes social sciences, psychology, and sciences like which deals with the human behavior. Okay. Positivism has more to do with objectivity, and interpretivism has more to do with the subjectivity. It is a quantitative based research, whereas interpretivism is a qualitative based research. Positivism is done by collecting data through experiments and equations, Whereas in interpretivism, the data is collected through interviews and descriptive answers and surveys. Okay,
Yeah.
so yeah, you can continue.
Okay, so I was just adding to the points over here. So that would be like one is the bottom up approach and other is the top down approach. In one, we conclude how society reacts in this certain situation. Other one is how individuals gonna react and become the society. So that is one of the differences in both approaches as well. Yeah, and that's like I've already explained.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. This was again very nice perspective on these.
Sir,
Yes,
can I elaborate?
please, sure.
Positivism is basically now positivism and interpretivism both are basically type of research methodologies. Where positivism is based on quantitative method to analyze human behavior, and interpretivism is based on qualitative method to analyze human behavior. Acha, positivism basically lies on the concepts of only matter exists. Yaver, can you please elaborate this point?
Sir, can we share? Can I share my screen if that's possible?
Please do that.
How do I share my screen? Just a second.
I think sir को stop करना पड़ेगा sharing, then you'll be able to.
Yeah, I'm not sharing
Okay, I'm unable
anything.
to share my screen.
Does
anybody know how I can share my screen?
So you have
Send
you have the permission. You'll just have to.
It's okay. We'll present without the.
Do you see the green share screen button?
I do not, unfortunately. That's fine. We can go
Okay,
without it.
fine. Yep.
We'll
please
manage
go.
without it.
Mhm.
Reality is basically what Maria was just saying. Is reality is relates to mind rather than matter in terms of it depends on the meaning assigned to the laws that we study. On the other hand, positivism is dependent on pre-existing laws. It argues that that the world or the object exists without the presence of the observer. On the other hand, qualitative approach argues that the object might change if there is no observer, if it exists in isolation. Thirdly, we unlike just a second. Thirdly, positivism relates to it argues that everything is measurable and relates to tangible factors uh, and it's an objective approach. Whereas on the other hand, the interpretistic approach argues that not everything is measurable. It has to do with intangible factors and it is subjective in nature regarding, let's suppose, the emotions assigned behind it or meaning behind things. And we studied the example of Phineas Gage, the person who had a rod through his head and he lost all emotions, but he was able to retain his logical aspect of his brain. Maria, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I hope we have presented this point that the positivistic approach basically lies on the objective world of ontology, whereas interpretivism lies on the subjective approach of ontology. And according to interpretivism, the research needs to find out a meaning to a phenomenon. Like we have to go after the meanings of everything, like the meaning, what is the meaning of x is equals to y? What is it? What does it mean to us basically? What is its significance to us? So this is what interpretivism is all about, and
So I'll conclude our presentation. Maria, are you still? Hello, I can't hear you. I'll conclude. I'll conclude on behalf of this behalf of our presentation. So in conclusion, basically, it is widely argued that the positive paradigm has been criticized because because not everything can work on laws, and not everything can be measurable. So a wider taken approach is basically a mixture of positivism and interpretivism in the end. That's it from our side.
Right. Thank you very much, Yawar and your group. G, Osama, you want to say something?
So, can we start next?
Please.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
sure.
want to say that. No worry, Atishan, you can go. No problem.
Okay, thank you. All right. So Sonam is with me and Ibrahim in the group. So I'll start with the positivism, and Sonam can continue with the interpretatism. So the positivism approach is to study the so basically it believes that if we study the matrices that shapes the human behavior, we can predict the human behavior based on the matrices. So human behavior is dependent on its surroundings. So how the human behaves is a result of its surroundings. So and those matrices of the surroundings are quantifiable, and that can be measured. So if we measure and study the surrounding matrices, then we can predict the human behavior based on those matrices, and that human behavior can be generalized, and if which means that if in a certain given situation in an environment, how am I reacting to how am I reacting will be similar to what you react in the similar situation. So if we study the situation, the matrices in the situation, we can easily predict the human behavior based on that situation. And this surroundings are independent, and the human behavior will be dependent on that surroundings. So this is the positivist approach will be more based on the structured surveys rather than on the interviews and the very subjective opinion of an individual. So it will be based on the structured surveys, and if we can take an example that there is a human behavior to wear the wool cloths in case of a cold temperature, so that surrounding will still exist, the reality would still exist irrespective of any human behavior exists or not, because the human behavior will always be same or generalized based on the surrounding that exist. So Shanam, you can continue with the interpretatism.
So yeah, but before I continue with the interpretivism, I would like to have some critics over like positivism. It is criticized that we only can't judge something based on logical thinking. We do need to include some sort of emotional understanding with that. So concluding positivism, I'll be explaining interpretivism next. So in interpretivism type of research, it is actually human driven or observer driven. It is said that you can't make any judgment based on some quantitative research. You need to include qualitative research here as well, or need to include observer's perception over it. An example of that could be, for example, there is a train, one of the observer is sitting inside and one of the observers is standing outside. These two observers will have different experience when the train is traveling. So this is about it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sonam, for that.
All right, so so my breakout group is Nasir and Uruba with me, obviously. So basically, what positivism is, right? Like as we seen the previous presentations, one point that leads to this cave, positivism is basically linked with the materialistic world, right? It based on the positive effects, follow data collection, and as well as the interpretivism had that's linked with the mental world. So as the points already suggested that the positivism leads to the objective approach and interpretivism leads to the subjective approach. So therefore, these both kind of paradigms are obviously an interlinked because the mental world and material world are obviously somehow linked, but with a very little argument. Therefore, the positivism and interpretivism are also linked at some kind of approaches, right? So further on, Rupa will explain the positivism and Nasir will explain interpretivism. Please, Rupa.
Okay, so positivism is more towards matter, as Sam has already told you. And according to this, research is all about to find the laws of nature. It utilizes the knowledge. They deny the existence of mind, and obviously that it works on quantitative data such as statistical methods, etc. And moreover, yeah, so it's unlike interpretivism, it's more about human, like it's human centric research. Positivism, it's not. It's about matter and quantitative. So yeah, that's it.
So is there anything else that you would like to point out in positivism? So then if we can go to interpretivism then. Rupa?
We can go to interpretivism. Yeah, we
Okay,
can go to
sure.
interpretivism. I'm so sorry,
Okay.
the internet was not working.
So Nasir, please.
Okay, so interpretivism has more of a contrast to positivism. So here you will have more of an investigative approach, and so instead you would be relying more on like observations, using the things that are available to you in the mental world, and so you're going to use qualitative methods instead of quantitative methods. So instead of just relying completely on facts, you're going to do experiments, and then based on those experiments you're going to make conclusions and your observations. No, that's pretty much about
Okay,
it.
then that's it. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Osama, in the group. Okay. Are there any groups left? Or I think everyone has presented. So seems like everyone has presented. So now it's my turn to basically react to what you have told me. But I would do that, I think, after a 10 minutes break. Welcome back, everyone. This is a question from Zain. Zain, आपके पास कोई question है?
Yes, sir. So one thing which I want clarification on is that most of the part that we have discussed, like we all are having our opinions and we have discussed different things, and not everyone agrees on some points. So what would be the evaluation criteria of writing answers or judging the answers that we'll be writing, so that we can just be clear on how to appear and how to take the questions?
Yep. So the criteria is the strength of your arguments. So whenever you point of view you express, you do it with the help of arguments, solid arguments. Arguments का मैं अभी structure बता देता हूँ very quickly, although it's not directly what we were planning to discuss today, लेकिन I think ये बहुत pertinent है. तो मैं इसको quickly यहाँ पे आपको जवाब दे देता हूँ कि किसी भी argument के 3 parts होते हैं, ठीक है? This is a very rough like description, not very accurate, but it's a good enough. So 3 parts होते हैं. एक तो claim होता है, whatever claim you are making. For example, you can say positivism is biased, ठीक है? But this is your claim. सेकंड पार्ट जो होता है वो एविडेंस होता है आर्ग्यूमेंट के अंदर, ये जिसकी बेसिस पे आप ये क्लेम करें। और तीसरा जो है इज कॉल्ड एज वारंट्स। वारंट का मतलब होता है कि दैट रीजन विच लिंक्स योर एविडेंस टू योर क्लेम, ठीक है, वो उसका वारंट होता है। फॉर एग्जाम्पल अगर आपको ट्रैफिक पुलिस मैन जो है वो आपको पार्किंग का टिकट आपको दे देता है, ठीक है, आपका पार्किंग चालान हो जाता है, तो उसको वो एविडेंस शो करनी पड़ेगी कि ये देखें आप गलत जगह पे आपने गाड़ी पार्क की थी, उसकी कोई तस्वीर दिखाएगा या वो बताएगा कि ये इसकी बेसिस पे, इस एविडेंस की बेसिस पे जो है आपको फाइन हुआ है, ठीक है। तो वारंट जो है, वारंट वुड बी दैट ट्रैफिक रूल विच सेज कि अगर आप गलत पार्किंग करेंगे तो आपको ये फाइन होगा। तो ये रूल जो है ये वारंट है, ठीक है। एविडेंस ये है कि आपने गलत जगह पे पार्क की हुई है। आई एम नॉट सेइंग आप गलत जगह पे पार्क करते हैं, लेकिन अगर किसी ने गलत जगह पे पार्क की हुई है तो वो एविडेंस है उसकी, गाड़ी गलत जगह पे पार्क हुई है। जो रूल है वो उसका वारंट है, और क्लेम जो है वो जो पुलिस वाला क्लेम कर रहा है कि अच्छा आपको फाइन देना पड़ेगा, ठीक है। तो किसी भी आर्गुमेंट के ये 3 पार्ट्स होने जरूरी हैं। तो जब भी आपकी जब आप क्वेश्चन का आंसर करेंगे तो you don't have to give the answer what everybody else is saying, ठीक है। You have to present your own arguments based on your own evidence, based on your own rationale and on warrants. तो जितनी strong होगी आपकी arguments उतना अच्छा आपका पेपर समझेंगे।
All right, thank you so much, sir.
Let's coming back to your presentations. देखिए presentations में again जो है first of all I would like to congratulate you all of you कि आपने इतने short time में you were able to compose such fantastic presentations और अपने अपने point of view present किए। और उसमें और अच्छी बात यह है कि आप सब लोगों ने अपनी presentation के अंदर indirectly जो है methodology और axiology को भी cover किया, ठीक है, जो कि हमने explicitly अभी discuss नहीं किया था, लेकिन तकरीबन सब presentations में you talked a little bit about methodology and axiology. So for example, when you say कि positivist लोग जो हैं वो quantitative methodology इस्तेमाल करते हैं और interpretivist जो हैं वो qualitative methodology इस्तेमाल करते हैं, तो हम इसका मतलब methodology की कुछ बात करें, और वो इसलिए करते हैं, positivist लोग quantitative methodology इसलिए इस्तेमाल करते हैं क्योंकि उनका ख्याल है कि जो नॉलेज है या है वो गैदर की जाती है बाय कलेक्टिंग फैक्ट्स या मेजरिंग देम, ठीक है। तो हमें मेजर करना पड़ता है नॉलेज हासिल करने के लिए। द बेस्ट वे और द ओनली वे प्रॉब्ली अकॉर्डिंग टू पॉजिटिविस्ट इज टू गो आउट एंड मेजर इट, ठीक है। दैट्स देयर मेथोडोलॉजी। तो जब हम मेजरमेंट की बात करते हैं तो वहाँ पे फिर हम क्वांटिटेटिव मेथोडोलॉजी की तरफ चले जाते हैं, क्योंकि वहाँ पे वी आर डीलिंग विद क्वांटिटीज। जब भी हम कोई चीज़ मेजर करते हैं तो उसको हमें क्वांटिटी में रिप्रेजेंट करना होता है। ऑन द अदर हैंड जो क्वालिटेटिव मेथोडोलॉजी होती है उसमें जैसा आपने बताया कि जो डेटा होता है वो डिस्क्रिप्टिव होता है या टेक्स्ट बेस्ड डेटा होता है, बेस्ड ऑन इंटरव्यूज, लोग क्या कह रहे हैं। तो वो क्वांटिटी नहीं है, दैट्स टेक्स्ट, ठीक है। What somebody is saying is text. So interestingly, text is not just writing. In qualitative methodology, text is anything that can be read, ठीक है। तो इसका मतलब है कि टेक्स्ट जो है वो एक पेंटिंग भी टेक्स्ट हो सकती है, because you can probably read something into that. When you see a painting, you can maybe read something into it. When you go out and observe some practice, ठीक है, तो उसको भी हम टेक्स्ट कह सकते हैं, because you are reading that. You are reading का मतलब होता है कि you look at it and try to understand कि इसका मीनिंग क्या है, ठीक है। जब आप मीनिंग कोई वो निकाल रहे होते हैं किसी चीज का, तो हम कहते हैं कि हम उसको रीड कर रहे हैं, ठीक है. तो एनीथिंग दैट कैन बी रेड will be called as text, not just what you type on a typewriter. That's text. That is text also, but text is other things as well, okay, which you can read and understand and derive meanings from. So that's why जो qualitative methodology होती है, उसकी जो methods होते हैं उसके, वो interview होता है, केस स्टडी होता है जिसमें आप डॉक्यूमेंट्स को देखते हैं, ठीक है. डॉक्यूमेंट्स भी एक फॉर्म ऑफ टेक्स्ट है, लेकिन उसमें फॉर एग्जांपल ऑब्जर्वेशन भी एक मेथड होता है. उसमें ऑब्जर्वेशन का मतलब होता है कि यू जस्ट गो एंड ऑब्जर्व व्हाट्स हैपनिंग एंड यू रिकॉर्ड व्हाट इज हैपनिंग. तो वो भी, उसको भी हम कहेंगे कि ये टेक्स्ट है. तो जो क्वालिटेटिव लोग हैं वो टेक्स्ट डेटा से काम करते हैं, और जो क्वांटिटेटिव लोग हैं वो न्यूमेरिकल डेटा से या क्वांटिटेटिव डेटा से काम करते हैं, बिकॉज दे वांट टू मेजर एवरीथिंग, ठीक है. जो इंटरप्रेटिविस्ट लोग हैं वो कहते हैं कि हर चीज को मेजर हम नहीं कर सकते, या फिर हम बहुत ज्यादा एक्यूरेटली नहीं कर सकते मेजर, या शायद इट्स वेरी डिफिकल्ट. फॉर एग्जांपल अगर हम कंप्यूटर साइंटिस्ट की एस्पिरेशंस को जानना चाहते हैं कि वो क्या करना चाहते हैं, पाकिस्तानी कंप्यूटर साइंस स्टूडेंट्स क्या फ्यूचर में करना चाहते हैं, ठीक है. तो इसको हम क्वांटिटेटिव वे में किस तरह से एक्सप्रेस करेंगे इस क्वेश्चन के आंसर को, कि कंप्यूटर साइंस स्टूडेंट्स क्या करना चाहते हैं, व्हाट डू दे वांट टू डू, व्हाट आर देयर एस्पिरेशंस, व्हाट आर देयर एम्स, ठीक है. तो वो उसको हम, जाहिर है ये इस टाइप का क्वेश्चन है कि जिसको क्वांटिटेटिवली जो है बहुत हम अच्छी तरीके से एक्सप्रेस नहीं कर सकते कि इसका आंसर क्या है, या व्हाट इज द ट्रूथ अबाउट दिस, और क्या है. फॉर एग्जांपल अगर हम ये मालूम करना चाह रहे हैं कि फॉर एग्जांपल वी वांट टू प्रिडिक्ट कि नेक्स्ट 10 years में पाकिस्तान की जो आईटी इंडस्ट्री है उसकी क्या शेप होगी, ठीक है. तो इसमें अगर से एक सब क्वेश्चन ये आता है कि अच्छा दैट डिपेंड्स ऑन कि हमारे स्टूडेंट्स क्या करना चाहते हैं फ्यूचर में, उस पर डिपेंड करेगा. और अगर हम ये मालूम करना चाह रहे हैं कि फ्यूचर में वो क्या करना चाह रहे हैं, तो ऑब्वियसली कोई नंबर्स में अगर हम उसका आंसर देंगे तो एकदम मीनिंगफुल, ठीक है. तो सो आई डोंट नो उस नॉवेल का क्या नाम था, मुझे याद नहीं रहा, बट आई थिंक देयर इज अ फेमस नॉवेल that says that the meaning of this life is 42. Do you know if I'm correctly remembering this thing? जी. So क्या है वो?
It's the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and उसके अंदर वो क्या कहते हैं, the whole thing is about क्या कहते हैं कि they set out to find out the answer to the meaning of life, right? And they built this huge supercomputer and everything to figure out the answer to the meaning of life. So when after years and years and centuries of calculations, जब उनको पता चलता है, तो the computer gives them the answer that the answer to the question of life, the universe and everything is 42. But then they figure out that they don't know the question to the answer to the meaning of life. So that is the funniest. I don't know if anybody else has read the book, but it's like the funniest series.
Yeah, so it's a very famous one, or yeah, it was written at a time जब सुपर कंप्यूटर्स वगैरह अपनी इन्फेंसी में थे. तो बड़ी इंटरेस्टिंग टू सी के उस जमाने में क्या कॉन्सेप्ट था कंप्यूटर का. But this actually also directly deals with कंप्यूटर साइंस से भी ये है, क्योंकि कंप्यूटर साइंस में although again I'm jumping into an area जो कि मैंने प्लान नहीं किया था आज के लिए, लेकिन जो एक क्वेश्चन बैक ऑफ द माइंड में था, आई वाज फीलिंग गिल्टी कि मैंने आप सब लोगों को पॉजिटिविज्म और इंटरप्रेटिविज्म के ऊपर रिसर्च करने पे लगाया है आज. लेकिन द रीजन व्हाई आई वाज फीलिंग गिल्टी वाज कि when it comes to computer science, ठीक है, You cannot very easily define it as either as positivist or interpretivist. Okay? Computer science is, just take my word for it. It looks positivist, but actually it's not. So do you all agree with this? Yeah, do you have your own opinion about is computer science positivist or interpretivist?
I'd say it's more towards positivist.
Sir, it actually depends. Like in data science, that we actually have to derive a business problem and derive meaning from that data. So it's more towards interpretivist rather than positivist.
So I guess it's the combination of both. As the functionalities are positivist, and what you do with those functionalities, that is interpretivist.
Right. Actually, this brings us to an even more fundamental question about computer science itself. और वो उसके लिए हमें जो है जो क्वेश्चन पूछना पड़ेगा वो ये है कि साइंस बेसिकली होती क्या चीज़ है और हाउ फॉर एग्जांपल ट्रेडिशनली जो हम उससे कंट्रास्ट करते हैं वो आर्ट से करते हैं, ठीक है? तो वी हैव आर्ट on this side and science on this side. So going on with this traditional dichotomy, मेरा आप लोगों से ये सवाल है कि नंबर वन, डू यू बिलीव इन दिस डायकोटमी कि एक जगह साइंस होती है एक जगह आर्ट होता है, और यस और नो, अगर दोनों के लिए क्या रीजन है, व्हाई डू यू से यस और व्हाई डू यू से नो, और उसको एक्सप्लेन करें फिर अपने रीजन को. So this is my question to you is, do you believe in this dichotomy between art and science?
Sir, I
Sir,
think
may I?
in terms of art, art can be very much dependent on science. Like if I take the literal meaning of art, like for example, you know, your paintings and whatnot. I mean, the type of materials you use, you would want to be like understand the type of materials that you're using, how the combinations work together, like even the type of paint you use, or even what type of pencils you use. There is a science to it, which ones for sketching, which ones for acrylics or whatnot. So I feel like art and science work both hand in hand.
Good. And what about poetry? Is it science or art?
I'd say it's that specific section of art would be completely dichotic. Like I wouldn't say there would be a science to it.
Okay. Very good contribution. Excellent. Very thoughtful. Anyone else would like to
May I?
express their feelings about this?
Sir, I would actually have to disagree a little bit with Nasir. Even in terms of art, I mean the value of art is not dependent on the science behind it or behind the pencils or the type of materials that you use. I mean, not necessarily. The value completely depends on how you interpret it and what's the meaning behind it and what's the significance behind it. So, in terms of art, I believe it is completely interpretivistic, while on the other hand, science, like we discussed in the last class, science is mostly inclined towards positivism, but it has a very strong influence of interpretivism because it involves some sort of assigning meaning to it in terms of even computer science or data science or any other form of science. The rules do exist, but in the end, it has to do with the interpretation as well. So there is definitely more dominance of interpretivism rather than positivism in everything. While in terms of art, it's mostly interpretivistic.
All right.
Sir, I would like to add, even
Sure.
poetry involves a lot of science, as like the structure of the poetry and what it plans to achieve, the impact is trying to make the theme. Everything involves a lot of soft science, not natural science, but there's I guess a lot of sociological, anthropological aspects even in poetry. So you cannot like bifurcate the two.
Okay. देखिए, I know most of you have something to say
I
here.
would like to
जी,
add something.
जी,
Can I?
sure.
So, sir, I think, like, for instance, they do have a convergence point because many of the computer science concepts, like in AI and stuff, they did originally originate from philosophy rather than they came from philosophical people rather than from computer scientists themselves. So, I think, like, you cannot really separate because even in computer science, there are things when even like if you go to it, like in deep learning and stuff, there are like papers being written. They do have some convergence in philosophy because there are some things that are now also becoming abstract in like computer science as well. So like how do we, because art and like computer science do have this element of abstractness in both of them, so like that could be explained more from art rather than the computer science itself, because even like how artificial neural network works, there is like explanation of them does require some sort of abstractness. So everything, even computer science to a certain point, is concrete. For instance, if it was a Facebook thing was they invented some robot and then they made it learn something, but then the robot started communicating in their own language. So they built their own language. So then how do we explain like computer science? Because it was supposed to be a controlled thing, but then the robots like because the networking inside them became so complex that the humans could not interpret it how they came up with their own thing.
Yeah, definitely. That was a very intriguing episode when they invented their own language. Gee, somebody else, they want to have some opinion or they want to express some of their opinion or.
Sir, when we talk about a positivist approach to anything, I think it's just a natural human inclination to bring structure to chaos, right? And we sort of have this illusion of control where we believe that anything that we can perceive, we can make structure out of. And I think it is important and relevant and pertinent to realize that a lot of times we do not have that control. And that is where the interpretivist philosophy comes in. And I think it's a good, positivist approaches are very good to focusing on things that we need to do. Like, for example, if we need to build buildings, then we would go with a positivist approach. But on the other hand, when it comes to art, or an expression of emotions, for example, or so, hello. Yeah, so I think it is important to realize that there are overlaps everywhere. For example, when we talk about aesthetically, it has been proven that pictures or structures or even faces that follow the golden ratio are more aesthetically pleasing than others. So we manage to bring a little bit of both to both sides. And when we go with the positivist approach, it is important to realize where we do not have control and where interpretivism will come in. So I think we need to keep an open mind and sort of take both approaches and see.
Yep, right. देखिए overlaps जहाँ तक हैं well, we can definitely, the more we think about it, तो वो ऐसा लगता है कि ये there is an overlap and a blurring of boundaries. लेकिन to get ourselves more familiar with these concepts, let's pretend that there is no overlap. Okay, I'm saying pretend. So उनकी जो idealistic forms हैं उनको पर पहले देखते हैं कि वो क्या कहती हैं और फिर हम देखेंगे कि real life में is it possible to separate them out or not. So that's why actually was my intention also behind this question when I asked, do you think science and art are two separate things? Or like you're saying no, or most of you are saying no, they maybe they're not as distinct as we think they are. Maybe there is some scientific element to art and maybe some artistic element to science as well. लेकिन हम ये जो इनकी overlaps हैं इनको discuss करने से पहले हम उनको ट्रीट करते हैं कि जो डिस्टिंक्ट चीजें हैं बिल्कुल सेपरेट आर्ट। तो अगर हम ये इस एजम्पशन पे काम करें कि ये बिल्कुल डिस्टिंक्ट चीजें हैं, तो फिर हम देखना चाहेंगे कि इनकी क्या कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स हैं जो कि इनको डिस्टिंक्ट बनाती है। ठीक है, व्हाट आर दोस टू कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स? So can anyone help me in finding out what are the core elements of science which are totally distinct from art? So can anyone help me with that?
So can you please repeat the question?
My question is, if we suppose, if we assume for this sake of discussion today, that science और art में कोई overlap नहीं है, दो बिल्कुल distinct चीजें हैं, तो in that case, what are the core properties of science and what are the core properties of art which make them distinct?
Science is based on the hypothesis testing method. So you need to come up with a hypothesis and then you need to find evidence that either supports or negates it. And then there are statistical tools and methods to go about that. So science is very qualitative. And when it comes to art is about, so I don't know if you want me to go into this, but I also think that high art is a sham. So in general, when we talk about like art, it is very commercial, but at the core of it, art is supposed to be something that makes somebody feel something, right? And something that can make me feel anger can make you feel happiness. And something that I see as a beautiful play on color can seem like trash to somebody else. So it is very, yeah.
Based on perception.
So I would add, like art is subjective, whereas science is objective. Like in science, it's more like a systematic sense, but whereas in arts, it's more about expression. It's more about feelings.
Okay. Right. So. So let's now come to the sort of let me call it a bridge. What do you think about creativity? Do you think creativity should be in the art domain or in the science domain?
So what do you mean by creativity first?
क्रिएटिविटी का मतलब है कि कोई ऐसी आइडिया, कोई ऐसी नोवेल ख्याल जो कि पहले किसी को नहीं आया, but it comes to you and or which something that requires a new way of doing things, expressing things, Creativity means coming up with a novel idea.
So it works in both domains. If you are an artist who comes up with a new way of like of expressing themselves, then you are not always, but just say for example, James Joyce came up with this form of expression with his short stories that were like very disjointed and they were very like contextual, and that was something that nobody had done before, I think. And Virginia Woolf came up with this idea of like time, where in her book To the Lighthouse, she talks about half of the book is based on like the I don't know how to explain it, but like it was really a play on time. And so it's lauded. If you're an artist, it is lauded. But if, for example, you talk about me as an individual, if I come up with a new idea in my organization, it is going to make more money if it's a good idea. So I think it links to both domains.
Yes, like so like the system of like creating an art that is systematic, that is more like science like properties, whereas creating an end goal, that is more like art, like what you make out of those steps, that is art. But the steps is like creative thinking, you need brainstorming, you need something to express the system, that is more systematic.
Okay, so this like brings up another question in my mind. What do you think of the possibility of a robot poet?
Hasn't it been done? there is this bot on Reddit that I come across often that writes haikus. So I think it's a possibility, and some of them are actually good. So
you think so? This you think that this has already been done? A robotic artist, a painter, like painting कर रहे हैं, एक वैन गो की पेंटिंग है, इसके साथ एक रोबोट की पेंटिंग लगी हुई है, दोनों सेम है लेवल का है.
yes sir, painting का मुझे नहीं पता, I'm more interested in writing, but I think the same concept should apply. If you can give a machine enough like क्या कहते हैं data that tells it what the importance of something is, for example like Van Gogh's paintings, and it can figure out a pattern about what makes those paintings actually good, and it can replicate, no, not replicate, like come up with something new. I mean, there are so many things nowadays that are mind-blowing. There are bots doing things that we could never have imagined. So I don't think creativity just lies in the domain of the humans anymore.
Okay.
There I would slightly differ, because like I think creativity is core human element. Like we can feed as much data as we want in the machine, but that would be just all the data that we have fed in the machine. That the machine is going to generate output from that data only. Like it cannot create data for itself only. Like it cannot, like there have been multiple tries to write a novel, to write a poem, but every try failed up till now. Like recently, there's no been successful in writing a successful novel or a story or a poem.
I mean, I think I read a couple of days ago, there was this, there are things that are written by bots, like I come across them all the time, and I don't know, I think you are giving too much importance to human.
Yeah, they can write, they can
Let me finish, Sarmad. I'm saying you're giving too much importance to being a human being, nothing per se. And generally when like people talk like very people who predict the future, there is going to be a point where humans will not need to produce anything. So I really don't see how creativity is a characteristic of being human. I am like barely creative, by the way. Just like as a person, I would say that I am incapable of creativity. So maybe as a new idea, but like I don't think, does that make me not human?
Okay, like these arguments that you're giving, that is a human, that is all creativity. Like I know I work in AI as well. I created NLP myself, but the computer or AI is not that smart enough. Like it cannot adapt that much. But you can say creativity or art.
Ji,
And
Aruba.
also,
Aruba has to say something.
Sir, I think the robot cannot innovate something like the human being. जैसे अभी आर्ग्यूमेंट्स की बात हो रही है, तो आर्ग्यूमेंट्स अभी उसने लर्न करके ही आर्ग्यूमेंट करना है, या उसने लर्न करके ही पोएट्री करनी है. वो खुद से कोई इनोवेशन नहीं कर सकता. That's the difference.
Ji, okay. And Muhammad Raza.
सर आई थिंक ये जो डिस्कशन चल रही है, ये चल रही है इन द सेंस ऑफ अ पर्सन इज डूइंग समथिंग. आई थिंक द क्रिएटिविटी इज लाइक, जो लाइक मेरी अंडरस्टैंडिंग ये है कि जो मुझे चीज अच्छी लगेगी या जो चीज मुझे क्रिएटिव लगेगी वो क्रिएटिविटी होगी. मतलब कि हम देख रहे हैं कि जो करने वाले के पर्सपेक्टिव से आई थिंक ये होता है कि क्रिएटिविटी देखी जाती है कि किसके साथ हो रही है. लाइक कुछ पेंटिंग्स है, मैं बोलूंगा यार ये पता नहीं क्या बना दिया, लेकिन कुछ लोगों के लिए बहुत क्रिएटिव चीज होगी, या कुछ लोग इसके लिए मिलियंस ऑफ डॉलर्स बाय कर रहे होंगे. तो आई थिंक क्रिएटिविटी इज लाइक दिस.
Right. Very good. Thank you, Raza, for this, and Aruba. So, देखिए ये discussion seemingly it's going in random directions, लेकिन इससे मैं काफी चीजें जो हैं extract कर सकता हूँ, and I want to do that right now because we are coming to the close of this session today. देखिए जो अभी जो discussion में एक चीज सामने आई है, वो आई है importance of meaning. ठीक है, what does it mean? अगर फॉर एग्जांपल एक ह्यूमन बना लेते हैं, which is I agree with Soha that very soon we'll be seeing robots amongst us which are practically indistinguishable from human beings in all respects. They will act like us, they will speak like us, they'll do everything that a human does, or practically indistinguishable होंगे वो, ठीक है? तो we cannot rule out that possibility right now. But from the philosophical level, ठीक है, the question is, what would that mean? Would that be a human, or does it, to be human means something different than an AI-driven robot, which acts like a human, which behaves like human, but internally it's just silicon and bits and bytes running on electricity. और या फिर हम उन्हें कहेंगे कि नहीं, एक रोबोट जो है और एक ह्यूमन जो है, they are also same in all other respects also. They may look similar, they may, like from a positivist perspective, जब आप measure करेंगे चीजें, ठीक है, तो आपको सेम मिलेंगी. क्रिएटिविटी का जब अगर आपने कोई मीटर बना लिया, उसको आपने मेजर किया, तो आपको पता चला रोबोट की भी क्रिएटिविटी उतनी है जितनी की ह्यूमन की है, ठीक है. उनकी डायलॉग कैरी आउट करने की एबिलिटी को आप मेजर करेंगे, उनके आईक्यू टेस्ट मेजर करेंगे, किसी भी तरीके से जब आप मेजर करेंगे तो दे विल कम आउट टू बी सेम. मे बी इवन रोबोट जो है वो आगे होगा इन बहुत सारी चीज़ों में, ठीक है. बट what would that mean, ठीक है. तो यहाँ पे हमारी जो मीनिंग का जो है इम्पोर्टेंस यहाँ पे आती है कि जो इंटरप्रेटिविस्ट हैं, ठीक है, they more towards meaning, ठीक है. We have to find out what does this mean, ठीक है, rather than measure everything, ठीक है. पॉजिटिविस्ट जो हैं वो कहते हैं we have to measure everything, or which we cannot measure, we just ignore that, ठीक है. That does not exist. Something that we cannot measure does not exist. बल्कि जो इंटरप्रेटिविस्ट कहते हैं कि the important things that exist, they cannot be actually measured, right? We cannot measure important things. Is the Winston Giants it's hard to Wittgenstein, I think उनका नाम था. He said that nothing worth saying should be said, right? Or cannot be said. So everything that we say is not actually worth saying, or what is worth saying cannot be said or should not be said. Okay? So this is a philosophical approach from Wittgenstein, क्योंकि वो सोचते थे कि language क्या चीज़ है. जो when we started off, he said कि language basically represents is a very positivist view था उनका शुरू में language का, कि language जो है is actually a representation, 1:1 correspondence है between reality and language. जो भी reality है उसको हम represent कर सकते हैं language के. This is the positivist view perspective, ठीक है. लेकिन बाद में he just totally flipped his perception, और उनका concept बिल्कुल change हो गया. And he said there are many things जो कि language में हम कर सकते हैं, but they do not exist, like unicorns, ठीक है. We can talk about unicorns, but there's no unicorns in nature. So language जो है is a means of expressing. So language plays many functions, और उनका meaning जो है, like अभी जो last point आया था, I think रजा की तरफ से, कि it's not the source that's the only importance. Language जो है, language के कोई inherent meaning नहीं होते, बल्कि language के meaning होते हैं when you use it, उसके use से जो है इसका meaning create होता है. So we have to see how the language is being used in order to understand. We cannot use a dictionary to understand what language means. We have to see how it is being used, and that use generates meaning. So yeah, it's similar to what creativity के बारे में जो अभी comment आया था, कि artist की creativity नहीं होती, बल्कि जो उसका consumer hota hai, because the person who consumes that art, that defines कि इसकी क्या creativity है. इसी तरह से जो design है technology का data science में, it's not the computer scientist who's designing it, it is the users who appropriate that technology, they build technology. So it's not the computer scientists who are building technology, it's the users who use that technology, they actually build that technology. So it is this kind of thing. So I'm coming to the end of my time limit today. So I'll just stop here by throwing out two words again, which might help us in beginning our discussion next time. This is the two terms are verifiability and falsifiability. तो इसके ऊपर हम डिस्कस करेंगे नेक्स्ट टाइम, वेरिफाइबिलिटी के ऊपर और falsifiability के ऊपर, and then we'll see के how these things relate to science and art, और उसके बाद then we'll ask this question के is computer science a science or is it actually a computer science and art. Okay, so I think we'll discuss these things, and meanwhile I'll upload some material for you to read, and then we'll go from there. All right, thank you very much. Thank you very much, everyone. That's all for today. I'll see you next week.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Allah Hafiz.
Thank you, sir. Bye.
Sir.
Allah Hafiz.
Thank you, sir.